President William Ruto's administration has borrowed 17 billion more than his predecessor in its first 6 months in office, upending the plan to go slow on debt. Treasury data shows that the new administration tapped loans worth 452 billion in the 6 months to March, which is more than the 434 billion that its predecessor borrowed in the same period a year earlier. Analysts had expected that the Ruto administration would cut fresh borrowing by a larger margin after committing to ramping up its tax collections. But the rise in spending under the bottom-up economic plan, which proposes to channel resources to sectors that can have massive impact in creating jobs and wealth, has prevented deeper cuts on the country's borrowing. Dr. Ruto faces a narrow fiscal space to roll out his policies after his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, increased public borrowing to fund infrastructure projects. Kenya's debt increased more than fourfold to 8 trillion under Ruto's predecessor, who invested heavily in new rail links and other infrastructure. The surge in liabilities left the country at high risk of debt distress, according to the International Monetary Fund. Kenya has insisted it cannot default on its debt repayment obligations. The increase in debt uptake came in a review period that saw the state cut both recurrent and development spending. Recurrent spending dropped by 4 billion to 542 billion when the Ruto and Kenyatta presidencies are compared, while development expenditure fell by 32 billion to 106 billion. But the 6 months have seen the Ruto administration commit more cash to loan repayments, underlining the burden of the ballooning public debt. Kenya paid 578 billion to service debt in the first 6 to March compared to 501 billion in a similar period a year earlier during the Kenyatta era. Dr. Ruto early said the government should never borrow to finance recurrent expenditure, adding the market could not sustain that kind of borrowing. Recurrent expenditure normally includes civil servant salaries, domestic and foreign travel, and fuel costs for the government's fleet of vehicles. In the 6 months, Dr. Ruto's team raised 928 billion in taxes compared to his predecessor's 866 billion.